I always mention is discipline. We tend to inspire startups start globally right away.
Sometimes I want the founders to be somewhat crazy.
They love what they do. Communication is not an expense.
Being completely honest, even if things go sideways. I'm gonna start with red flags because there are many. We always see them way too often, I would say, but there are quite few. And I understand that most of the funds have red flags of their own. We have our red flags. First one I would say is adequacy. So how adequate the founders are, because oftentimes when they come to us and they present their projects and they're asking for investment, obviously, we want to know their valuation. And a lot of times, without any revenues, they have the valuation that's way too high. Because oftentimes they tend to compare themselves to those in Silicon Valley, let's say. And again, I don't say it's wrong, but then to be adequate and to know how to evaluate yourself in the right way, not to scare off the investors. I think this is one thing. Another thing that I always mention is discipline, because this is a huge thing. And we've mentioned that a couple of times, that if you don't know all the answers, or if we're not giving you a straight answer, yes or no right away, but we're saying that we're interested, but we're not ready to make a decision, we want to follow you for a couple of months and get the updates from you to get a better understanding whether we want to continue these relations. And that's where I'd say 70% of the startups vanish. They disappear because they don't think it's necessary to provide the updates, because they say, or they think, or they act at least like the investors are not worth investing, half an hour of your time per month, because I don't think you need more to provide them with those updates and continue build up that trust and conversation. So this is two. The third one I'd say is doing the homework. And again, we went through a lot of it. Getting prepared to what the fund wants to see from you, what kind of metrics, who are the LPs or investors, or who's on investment committee in charge and making the decisions. Who are these people? What do they invest in? What they like? What they work for? What they understand? Are they into my tech, or are they more generic? You have to understand that. When startups, oftentimes Ukrainian startup founders, they say, hey, we're validating our product on the Ukrainian market, and then tomorrow we're going to go and expand in Europe. What's Europe? Europe is so diverse. Is that Poland? Is that Estonia? Is that France? Is that UK? What do you know about that market? Do you have someone there? Have you been there? Was that as a tourist for a short trip, or did you live there? Do you understand the competition there? Do you understand the market? Have you been exposed to that market? So that's number 3. And the fourth one I'd like to mention is, and this is one that I know you can argue with me about, is starting at the local market. Because for obvious reasons, before the 2022, most of the Ukrainian startups would start at the local market. It's closer, it's more understandable, and then they would expand if everything works. Whereas now, because the Ukrainian market, because of war, it shrank, and it's very small, we tend to inspire startups start globally right away. And I'm ready to argue about that, but we think that
Well, there are different models, right? You can start locally, train and typically that's the typical model, for example, for US company. They start for the US market and then they go international. But there are some companies
and
quite
they make
successful.
A lot of mistakes that way.
But there are some companies that think about going to international markets right away. So, it just depends on the business model, on the mindset of the founders, on their knowledge, skills. There's no cookie cutter approach here. One, and then adequacy of the founders, Sometimes I want the founders to be somewhat crazy. you know,
passionate, crazy, yeah.
crazy about their ideas. You
Not
know,
monotonous, as you've mentioned. Not monotonous, as you've mentioned, right? Crazy about their...
that passion comes through. I mean, look at the great founders of the centuries. They're not very adequate people, would you say?
You know, Natalia, the secret of what you're saying is they love what they do, okay? They love what they do, and it's hard to hide that. And when you see somebody like that, and you know that they're smart, and you know that they're disciplined, you want to support them. You want to because they love what they do. How many people love what they do? Not as many as you'd think.
And here's the biggest secret of VC, right? All the pieces of the puzzle have to fit in to make a good story for the investors to believe that that's the investable business. But ultimately, you invest in the person. Yeah. Yeah. You invest in the founder. You invest in the team. Yeah. Not in the business, because how many times the founders have pivoted their business. So it's really the person you invest in, and that's what has to come through during the presentation.
And that's actually a great question to ask the founder and the team. Guys and ladies, if you said to us, look, we tried this, and we did what you said, and there were too many gorillas, and the customer didn't care, okay? And we knew it would be a sin to waste people's talent on something that isn't going to work. So we found something else, okay? Let's say that happened. Would you still invest in us because you believe in the person and the team, even though we're doing something completely different? Because I have news for you. Most businesses who are successful are doing something completely different 5 years later, and 8 years later, and 12 years later, because the market has changed, and the competitors have changed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Communication is not an expense, okay? You got to do it anyway. I have to give an update in 30 days. Okay, so I have to figure out how to create something really exciting by the middle of the month. We got this client. We made our product do this so that I have something exciting to tell people. And those people include not just the venture investors, they include my team. So that if I know that I have to communicate something not once a quarter, but monthly, because that's the rate that defines the nature of this business. I'm not going to spend any time on tertiary dead ends that customers won't pay for. I'm going to spend my time on something that gives a big bang for the business. The other thing on the discipline and getting back to people. Dear friends, think about this like this. The investor is a customer. If you treat the investor as a customer, they will say, this is interesting, because they probably treat their customers this way, and that's a winning approach, because these things are connected. So it's a little, the red flags remind me of our recruiting process. And one of the dictums in our recruiting process is, if you're recruiting somebody, okay, and you're having a conversation, but you see a turkey feather sticking out of their shirt, okay, it's probably a turkey, all right? Imagine you're the investor, just for an hour. What would you like to get, and when? And there's your answer.
And to wrap it up, one more thing that, again, we've been talking a little bit about is honesty. Being completely honest, even if things go sideways.
Yeah.
This is something that helps to build that trust and to show that you care about investor and not just trying to feed them all the bullshit and beautiful stories and pictures, trying to convince that everything goes well.
There is such a powerful thing, and I've lived on both sides of it. When you have, for example, real case, a financial advisor, okay? And one of the investments that they recommended went wrong. And you know it, and they know it, and you sat down, me, and did the numbers and said, oh my God, not only did they not pay anything, but they fell this much in value, okay? But, you know, it's one of dozens of things, so it can slip by, all right? And then you get a call from your guy, who in this case is a guy, and he says, Adrian, and he tells you all the things that you had just calculated yourself. And he didn't have to, and the odds were pretty good because there are a lot of other things going on that didn't happen. So how do you think I look at that person who was brutally honest when they didn't need to be, when they could have gotten away with it, but yet they told the truth? It's not that complicated. Now, it was easier because it was in the context of a relationship that was very successful over many years, but nobody likes to discuss something that went wrong, okay? But when they proactively tell you that, two things happen. First of all, I don't have to spend a lot of time calculating this stuff and tracking it by myself, which saves a lot of time and focus. But think about the respect you have for that person because you know that you can count on them. Yeah. Wow. There was an old dictum that at Schwab in the earlier days when they were much more customer centric even than today. And they used to say, you know, ethics is what you do when nobody's watching. Okay? Yeah, I could get away with it. Is it the right thing to do? It's basically never.
And then your team, I mean, they know, right? Because they know. And if you're trying to, you know, behave that way and not give the truth to the investors, I mean, they know. And how do you motivate them?
Exactly.
That's not going to work.
They're going to sit down and say, how can we solve this problem? And how can we solve this problem as soon as we can? Now, I don't know how many problems there were over the 3 years, but there were hundreds, okay, easily in the hundreds. And imagine what happens, and going back to the finance thing as well. Now take that situation and just vary it and say, you know, this is what's happening. This may be a good time to make a decision, okay? Not 6 months later, but now. But on that project, which is the microcosm for every startup and project, there are hundreds of these situations. Multiply the impact where you found a problem, you let people know the same day, they're working on it immediately, as opposed to, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow, okay? Multiply that by hundreds of times and you have either a self-defeating culture or people that you say, you know, I don't know what you'll be doing in 5 years, but I want to be investing with you, whatever that is.
Yeah, and one more point as we're wrapping this up that I would like to make is that Ukrainian entrepreneurs are making tremendous technological advances as we speak on the battlefield. And we've seen it. And, you know, and that will, I think, will lay the foundation for rebuilding Ukraine and for the spurt of Ukrainian ecosystem and growth after the war, because there will be the end of the war. And you know what surprised me just lately, before you make your point, that Americans come up to me, they have known nothing about entrepreneurial ecosystem, but when they hear the news about the drones, about the successful technological operations, you know, that frankly marvel the world, they say, you know what, after the war, there's going to be a tremendous spurt in economic development in Ukraine. And I was taken aback because this person has nothing to do with business. She knows nothing about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and she's making such bold predictions, which I firmly support.
So what you triggered me when you said that is one key message, okay? When the rebuild comes, we need you. We need effective entrepreneurs. Second message, we need you to help win this war today. But you need an army of great entrepreneurs for the size of given the size of the task that will be required.
And we
Just
do
keep
see
that in
them,
mind.
and there will be winners.
And what?
And we do see them, and there
see
will
them.
be winners.
Yep.